Welcome back to the 15,000 acre challenge here on the Huron County, Michigan 16X map. Today, we're jumping right back into the thick of things as our spring field work continues across these massive fields. If you caught the last episode, you'll know we left off with two huge operations running side by side, and we're picking up right where we left off. Right now, we've got 5 big case tractors out in the dirt, working together to plow under multiple smaller fields and merge them into a brand new 600-acre mega field. At the same time, our other 3 case tractors are hard at work planting another 600-acre field full of oats. So there's no shortage of action happening on the farm today. I'm currently headed over to check in on the seeding crew because our 3 massive Bourgault air drills are chewing through seed and fertilizer like crazy, and they'll need a refill to keep this planting operation rolling. Once they're topped off, we should be able to wrap this massive oat field up, and it'll officially be our first planted field for our new mega farm. I've also made some big equipment changes since the last episode. I realized pretty quickly that running the Case 875 13 shank rippers just wasn't going to cut it for this challenge. Don't get me wrong, they're great tools, but when it takes 5 to 6 hours to plow one field, it just doesn't fit the pace we need for 15,000 acres. So I decided to swap them out for 5 brand new John Deere 2410 chisel plows. These cover more ground in less time, which means we'll be able to keep this series moving while still tackling projects on a massive scale. And as we speak, those Deere chisel plows are already out there breaking ground behind our 5 tractors on that new 600-acre mega field. Once both of these big operations wrap up, we'll head back to the mega farm and advance time forward into April. That's when things really kick off, because April means one thing: corn and soybean planting season is here. At that point, we'll be gearing up to get hundreds and hundreds of acres of soybeans and corn into the ground. To start, I'll be sending out a couple of Case Steiger 580s with sulfur cultivators to prep the giant 600-acre field that surrounds our mega farm. While they're out there working up the ground, I'll be making a few more equipment swaps as I realize a couple key pieces of equipment aren't quite working the way I expected them to. And then comes the fun part. It'll be time to roll out the big guns. All 4 of our massive case planters. These have been sitting in the shed since we bought them, and today they'll finally see some action. We'll get them all topped off with seed and fertilizer, and as soon as the cultivators have a good enough head start, we'll send those planters rolling into that same 600-acre field to get our first soybeans of the season into the ground. It's another massive day of work here on the 15,000 acre challenge, and the pace is only going to pick up as we get deeper into the year. Between plowing, planting, equipment upgrades, and building out our mega farm operation, there's never a dull moment when you're farming at this scale. So let's not waste any more time. Let's fire up the engines, hit the fields, and see how much progress we can make today. If you're looking forward to the 15,000 acre challenge, please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.